Oh, I have to put myself on Do Not Disturb, don't I?
Yeah, I muted my stuff over here.
I have one phone here that I can't figure out how to mute, and I don't want it to ring.
New message playback. 20.
All right, I'm tossing it. Hopefully it won't ring.
Okay.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to my Disney Brain. Today is February the 9th, and it's 2021. And we have a really exciting show planned today, and we being myself and Ruby from Ruby's Best Life. So hello, Ruby.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
So first recording for 2021, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to be seeing a lot of Ruby this year. We pledged to collaborate a lot more this year. So according to the numbers, you guys enjoy these podcasts when Ruby's on, and we learn a lot, of course. And we're going to learn a lot today because our topic today, we're going to be talking about how to plan a Disney vacation in 2021. As you know, if you live on the earth, things have changed in 12 to 14 months time. And Ruby and I are both planning to travel in 2021. We're committed to it. And we're going to talk to you about what we're doing in hopes that it can help you decide what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
So, Miss Ruby, you ready to rock and roll?
Yes. And I wanted to kind of talk through one of the things that I was thinking about. And I wanted to know if you kind of had the same challenge with your plans. So you and I have planned multiple trips to Disney World. And you go in November for your birthday. Mm-hmm. I tend to go for Christmas and New Year's. And it was really hard for me to plan the way that I normally do because I didn't know if I could do the things I normally do. And when I say do it, I just even go to the hotels. Did you have that challenge too? Like, wait, I don't know if my checklist is still valid.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because when you think about the normalcy that we were under for so long, that doesn't exist anymore. And so even checking into a hotel, rentals, car rental, if you have to deal with that, dining, because I have that on my list, how do we secure the dining and how do we determine what we're going to do in terms of eating? Everything's kind of changed, and it makes you makes you have to adjust. So adjusting how you cure that information, adjusting how you attend, and then really overall kind of adjusting your expectations. Because Disney came out, we're going to talk about this. Disney came out with some new guidelines for PPEs and things like that. I think it was last week. So I'm going to go over that really quick as we get started, but just kind of adjusting your expectations. And I'm saying that not to say, okay, you're not gonna have a good time, but you have to understand things are different now. So some of the stuff that you used to do and the way you used to do it, you may have to figure out a way to still do it and do it differently. Mm-hmm. I think dining is a perfect example. We're used to going in, hostess takes us by the hand, takes us to the seat, and the restaurant's full, of course, because we waited for this reservation. And there's a lot of ambiance and then crowd and all this other kind of stuff. That's not going to be the case if you decide to go dine at a Disney resort now. There's no buffets anymore. So the character interactions, if you do a character breakfast or some sort of luncheon, you should know that you're going to have what they're called a social distance selfie with the characters. They'll still be there, but you won't get to be as close to them as you normally are used to. So these are just some brief differences, but the long answer to your question, Ruby, is yes. I started to feel that way last year, which is why I decided not to go. And then as I'm planning this year, it hit me that even though this year we're going to make it happen, still some things may be a little different.
Right. Yeah.
And I know with what you're planning, when we get into it, it's still really different.
It'd be different for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you before we get going, because we kind of chatted, Ruby and I talk and text and that kind of stuff, even away from the podcast. But I want to just kind of catch up on the podcast and see how you were doing, see how the family's going, and what great thing that you do over the holidays, and how has the first month of 2021 been for you?
Okay. So we're doing really good. By the grace of God, we're all healthy. And I don't know anybody in my personal circle that has contracted COVID. So I'm very grateful for that, because I know that it's affected so many different people, and the effects are tremendous. So I'm grateful for our health. Start there. Holidays were good, different, obviously, because we didn't get to do the big family gathering. I usually host Christmas and have like a massive amount of people. We didn't do anything like that. But I spent New Year's Eve and New Year's Day going to downtown Disney. So that was really awesome to go there. And the crowds were very low. And with the stay-at-home order at the time, I don't even know if it's called a stay-at-home order. It's been lifted since, but you couldn't eat in downtown Disney. So everybody would just kind of shop and then go home, which was what I was doing anyways. I didn't feel comfortable just eating out in public like that. But it was great to get down there and get my little bit of Disney, and the boys loved it. So yeah, we're happy, healthy, and continuing through 2021.
Well, that's good. That's good. We're good. We didn't travel, which was a Christmas gift to me alone, because we normally travel every year for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Well, I take that back. We're usually 2 years on, 1 year off. Like we'll go for 2 years and then I'll get a break. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're good, healthy, like you said. Certainly no complaints, and we get out and about. We still enjoyed the Christmas. The Disney Christmas special, which is our deal. It was different, obviously, but we still enjoyed, and we had a very good holiday. Weather was okay. Everybody was here. We didn't have a lot of family, and obviously because of social distance things like that. But I have two brothers that live here in Atlanta, so I am fortunate where I still get to see them. They're about the only people that I would invite over to my home. But yeah, everything's good. We're obviously still loving doing the podcast, and certainly enjoying when you're able to join us and be a part of it. So we're excited for 2021. We probably won't talk about it much today, but you and I have talked about what we're going to be doing new for 2021 with the podcast, and some different directions we're going to be going in. So I'm really excited about it, and I think once we really roll it out, that the folks that are listening are going to be excited about it. And before I forget, in case we have first-time listeners, go and check out Ruby's Instagram, because she does take really great pictures down at downtown Disney. For those of you who don't know, I'm on the East Coast, Ruby's on the West Coast, so she's able to kind of go and check out Disneyland or what's going on with Disneyland and keep us updated. From pictures to, her participation on the podcast and just giving us verbal updates. If you're interested in knowing what's going on with Disneyland, how it looks, what's going on there, Ruby's our eyes on the street on the West Coast. So
yeah.
All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. And here's the value for listening to the podcast. So 2020 sucked out all of our vacations. Nobody went anywhere, and everybody's raring to go for 2021. Okay. So we're going to talk to you about how to plan your Disney vacation, be it on land or a cruise. Right? So Ms. Ruby is going to start us off and talk about what may be taking place on the water. And then we'll both kind of collaborate, because we're both planning land trips as well. So, Miss Ruby, however you'd like to start off, you have the mic.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up a very important data point when it comes to Disney cruises. The first data point is Disney has opted to cancel their cruises that are more than 7 days in 2021. So if you had booked a cruise already, your cruise was canceled if it was more than 7 days. Also, if you were trying to do, I love transatlantic. taking those long cruises that go over to Europe and Spain. So that's not happening this year. That was a big deal. We are in I think we're coming up on a year of cruises being canceled. So what does that mean? That means that Disney has taken all those folks who canceled their cruises, and majority of them have rebooked. So there's not a ton of spots in 2021 and 2022 at, I would say, price points that are amazing. Disney typically is an expensive cruise line in comparison to others. I think that there's reasons for that. And I would say for folks, if you're interested in a cruise and you see it and it makes sense with you for dates, it makes sense with you for cost, and your deposit is refundable, put the money down, grab your spot, and keep in mind when the final payment is due. That's my biggest tip. I can elaborate in far more detail about it, but grab your spot, because we don't know what rules are going to be put in place. We don't know when cruising will start again. We don't know if there will be additional limitations put on by the CDC. Canada just announced that they are extending their no sail order into Canadian waters through 2021 for ships that I believe are over 50 or 100 people. So that's put the entire Alaska cruise line schedule in jeopardy. So grab your spot.
Yeah.
Family
so just so I'm clear, anything over 7 days is not happening.
No, cancel.
All right, so guys, anything over 7 days not happening. I cannot recall the technical term. It could be the rollover from CDC, whatever that measure is, the no sell. But I was watching it last year. It seemed like every 2 or 3 months they were instituting an additional 2 or 3 months. You know, they would roll it further out and roll it further out. So you're saying that you can make a reservation at this point, but with the understanding that that roll may continue.
Yes.
You may get rolled at some point in terms of if your date comes up, for example, in June, and you say, okay, they've rolled it out until March. Well, if March comes around and they roll it another 2 or 3 months, then guess what? You've now been impacted. Am I right saying that?
Yes. And I'd say a big change between last year and this year is when we didn't know how massive this pandemic was going to be in its effect.
Yes.
Disney was canceling cruises, but they were giving incentives for you to keep your money with Disney. So if you'd paid in full, they would either refund you or they would give you some type of onboard credit up to a certain percentage, and you'd keep your money with Disney and just rebook for a different cruise.
Right.
It is unclear if that's going to continue. I've heard reports where people say they paid in full and they've gotten a refund and or they've rebooked, but they didn't get extra money or extra incentives to stay with Disney.
To do that. Yeah.
So it varies. I personally canceled my cruise last year before even having to deal with that, because that was a debate I was having with my sister. We had a whole video on, should we do this or should we cancel it? And we ended up canceling. So I personally don't know from experience, but from what I was reading and other people's experiences, that onboard credit varies and you're not guaranteed.
You bring up a good point, Ruby, because as you stated when you first started talking, both of our families travel quite a bit domestically and some internationally. And I was looking to book something this year internationally for my wife and I, because we missed a Paris trip last year. But in doing so, I noticed reviews were really harsh when it came to the process of trying to get monies back for either deposits, trips paid in full, whatever the case may be. So I was very hesitant, and this isn't necessary. This is just travel. There are a lot of offers out there now, but I look at ones that specifically say that it's fully refundable and you're able to change your plans within 48 hours of your departure. That means whatever you can do it 3 months from now. But if you decide to change your mind within 48 hours of 3 months from now, then you can still be fully refunded. There are a lot of people that were writing Better Business Bureau and a lot of these groups that were saying these travel agencies will not return their monies, or they were giving them credits and they didn't want credit. They wanted their monies back. There was a lot. So I became very weary of that. And therefore I didn't book because, I actually had a trip for my wife for Christmas. And we're just, well, I shouldn't say just, some people are not going anywhere. But so Vegas was an option, or at least it seemed like at the time. But even in booking airplane tickets, I don't normally get the insurance and all that stuff. But I said, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. So I did all of that to make sure that my investment stays with me. I don't want the day to come, something is not comfortable with us and we don't want to go. We have the option of saying, you know what, we changed our mind. We'll push it out or give us our money back, that sort of thing. So I bring that up because, like you said, Disney isn't inexpensive. So you don't want to make some huge investment. And I'm not saying Disney's going to do this, but just make sure you feel comfortable before you go and start swiping your credit card or whatever you're doing to pay for this, because sometimes these monies get tied up and can be a little pain in the patootie trying to get it back.
Yes.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought up insurance because I think that I would advise people, if you're going to get insurance for your flights, to call the airline and ask them what it covers. I usually fly Alaska Airlines, but I have in the past flown other airlines, obviously. But I called United Airlines to ask about their insurance policy. And I was specifically saying, hey, if my stuff gets canceled, my cruise gets canceled, and I've spent now $1,000 buying airline tickets, do I get a refund? And if I get the insurance, do I get the refund? And I was told that the insurance is really more for medical reasons. You wouldn't get a refund if your cruise gets canceled. And I was like, oh. So I didn't get the insurance. The guy actually was like, so if I were you, I would pay more money to get, I think they have like different levels of tiers for their tickets, get this other tier, and you could get a refund that way. And I was like, okay. So I would recommend, depending on the airline and then what vessel that has the insurance, call them and say, this is my specific concern. Would it be covered under this insurance policy?
That's a great point. So what about the process itself, booking? Is it relatively the same? Everything's still done online. You can call the cast member if you decide to book it directly with them.
Yes, booking's the same. I like to look online and kind of see the pricing that I'm interested in, and then I will call and ask questions and inquire about any type of changes. One thing I do want to bring up about final payment for Disney, pay close attention because it's not 90 days. Sometimes it can be even more. So for example, I'm on a cruise in September. My final payment is due in April. And that's the only line I know. And that's the only cruise line that I've ever been on where my final payment was due, before 90 days.
Yeah. So, they might say, you might as well pay in full now. Like, just do it today.
Know when that is. Know when your final payment is. And keep in mind, it's like a slow creep. But yes, online is good. Another thing that is nice to look at is Disney does have all of their inventory available up until May of next year. If you are a certain tier, you might get some sneak peeks into what's going to be available past May. So the third and fourth quarter of 2022, but they do kind of keep that close to the chest. So as soon as that booking window opens, I'd recommend checking it out and then calling and grabbing your spot.
Okay. So I have a question for you because even before COVID, people could get sick on a cruise and it'll be an outbreak like nobody's business. Any special precautions? What's that?
I think it's called the norovirus. Norovirus. That was like a big, I'm gonna look it up. That was a big virus. Everybody would get sick
when they would go on the cruise. Yeah. My son, it happened to him one year. We were on a cruise and he got it was like food poisoning or something. We were confined to our room for 24 hours.
Oh, really?
24 hours. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But what I wanted to ask is, in terms of the vaccine, because vaccines out, are cruise lines saying, hey, only folks that have been vaccinated can come? Are there any other special requirements or ask coming from Disney saying, hey, since this technology is available now, our preference is to keep down any type of outbreak or worry with that? We are going to require our guests, and I guess require, it gets into civil rights and these other things, but any language on what the cruise line is asking people to do in order to be safe on the vessel?
Mm-hmm. That's actually a topic for one of my videos moving forward. Disney has not said that, but there is cruise lines that have said this, that proof of vaccine will be required to get on their boats. They are overseas cruising going on right now out of Asia. And so I believe that was the first, I have to look at the cruise line, but there are a couple cruise lines that have said that. What would that mean for us and Disney? I don't think Disney will say that because kids cannot currently get vaccines if they are under the age of 12. A big part of Disney Cruises portfolio and what they target is families with children.
Yeah.
I mean, even the way their boat is set up, I mean, they got rid of the casinos to extend the kids clubs. So either they would require it for adults and not children, or I don't think they would require it at all. It would make people feel better to know that the adults were vaccinated, but again, the kids wouldn't be.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking out loud. I said, at some point that's gonna come up, and I don't think it's obviously as widely available, but at some point, I think. Listen, cruises are cruises. Once you're out there, it can get, if somebody's doesn't have the integrity, then you put everybody at risk. Now that's the same on land, but we've got a much wider, spread. If you're on a cruise ship, that can lend itself to be a very uncomfortable vacation. So we don't want any of that. Anything else on the cruise front that you found out as you're planning?
Yes. I think the other big thing is once cruising does start, there has been conversation based off of other cruise lines that are cruising currently, if the U.S. will take in part this. So one thing is some of these cruise lines that are cruising require you to have a balcony room. You cannot have an inside cabin.
Oh, okay. Okay.
To have access to circulation, fresh air.
Right.
Number one. Number two, not allowing any excursions that are not booked through the cruise line itself.
I was going to ask about the extracurriculars. Were there still going to be options?
Yes. No, it sounds like if they try to duplicate what's being done by other cruise lines. Now, granted, there are some that are a little bit lax, but I've heard of some that are extremely strict. And I imagine Disney will either not cruise or they're going to go for the high bar. But you would not have the option to get off your boat unless you had an excursion booked through Disney, where they could, 1, control where you go, 2, monitor what you're doing, and 3, limit your exposure. Because vaccines and potential negative COVID tests, let's say they don't go vaccines and they say you have to have a negative COVID test to get on this cruise, you could potentially be exposed just by getting off of the boat. And
you have to leave half of the crew behind or something.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about different steamship lines, vessels rather, and cruise lines. It's my transportation background, steamship lines. But in addition to that, we're talking about different ports. So depending on where you're going, if it's outside the U.S., some folks may say you can't call here. If you don't have, folks that are getting off that's been vaccinated, we don't want you. I'll tell you right now, some of these smaller islands are strict, and they have to be, because they're virtually living on a cruise ship. Mm-hmm. They're on an island. And so Puerto Rico, Curacao, Aruba, all of the Key West and these areas, not Key West, Key West too, but the Virgin Islands, they're so small, Barbados and all these places, you just can't dump people off and then take them back on like we're normally used to. Who knows what's going on with those folks? And they could, really impact the integrity of that island just by one port call. So I got to think at some point those conversations are being had about calling these ports and vaccinated or not. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You're right. They have to negotiate with that local government on requirements. One thing to note is the U.S. I think is pretty strict. I think there's other places in Europe that are more strict, but there has been conversation as well. And of course, I'm drawing a blank. There is a law that states that if a cruise ship is not a U.S. assigned ship, doesn't bear a U.S. flag, then if they from the U.S. port, they have to stop in another country's port before returning. They cannot go directly from a U.S. city to another U.S. city. And that's where Canada and other countries, like in the other places in the Caribbean, play a big part, because you could leave from, let's say, Long Beach, and you can go up to, I don't know, Cancun, and then come back to the U.S. and now you have your cruise, and it's fine. But if you were trying to go to Alaska, for example, the reason the Alaska cruise is in jeopardy is because normally you would stop in Canada and then continue up to Alaska to make sure the law isn't broken, and we can't do that now. So there's been a lot of conversation around, could a lot of these cruise lines start going in and out of Mexico instead of the United States, because that would be a way around that law. And you could potentially start in Mexico, stop in the US, go wherever else, and come back. And there's a lot of people who are doing think pieces and videos on that, if that will actually end up happening. So not on the radar here.
Yeah. Well, listen, I guess we'll just keep following this, and we'll provide updates as we move forward. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share? I know there's probably a ton of stuff we could talk about.
I think those are the big things. If you want to book a cruise, grab your spot. Just make sure you can get your money back, and keep in mind when that's due. And then also don't get super invested, because I think out of all of these different types of vacations, cruising is going to be the one that continually gets pushed out until we see a real break in our numbers here in the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's the one that's most likely to be negatively impacted if there is an outbreak. And I think that's obvious. So I'm okay with them taking their time. Listen, the last thing you want to do is to be, well, two things. I've never wanted to be on the ship when there's a bad storm, and I don't want to be on there when folks are getting sick. It's not going to be enjoyable. I don't have to be there to tell you. I think that's a reasonable assumption. So we'll keep you posted. Thank you, Ruby, for that. I'm going to give you some quick updates as it relates to Disney World, and then Ruby and I both talk about what we're planning to do with Disney World. And actually, Ruby, I'm trying to figure out how we can plan to be there around the same time. So we'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about circling back for Christmas. There's a show at the I lose the name of this hotel. I've been there so many times, but every time I think about it, I call it the Waldorf Astoria, and it is not the Waldorf Astoria. It'll come to me in a minute. There's a Christmas show, and they have like ice skating and all sorts of stuff. And I always fancy staying at this hotel because it has balcony rooms inside the hotel where you can see the show from your room.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So let's see if my subconscious can bring it to me while I'm concentrating on something else. So for the listeners, you guys, we're talking about land trips now. I'm going to start off by giving you some news updates from Disney, and this, for the most part, does also include Disneyland. Although Disneyland is not operating right now, this measure is across the board for Disney. So there are some new social distancing measures put in place. We're going to talk about first about the monorail. So Disney's ended social distancing measures on several rides throughout the resort. But guests that are traveling on the monorail, for example, the Magic Kingdom or Epcot or wherever, are now being physically separated by physical barriers inside the train. And Ruby, I actually saw a video and I saw this and I was like, I know that's the monorail, but why did it have a wall so close to the seat? And then I said, oh, they literally built a barrier now. So when you come into the monorail, it's kind of forcing you to sit or stand. There's literally like a barrier. So let's say if you came to the monorail, you know, the seat over here and the seat over there and the poles in the middle. No, two poles may have a barrier and a wall. So only one person can be on this side. And the other side may have one barrier and two seats. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It looks a little weird. But I think what people were doing is they were crowding into the monorail. And obviously that's not social distancing. So there's that piece. According to the park's website, here's bigger news for large parties. According to the website, Disney's website, parties of 10 or more people, they're being asked to split up into smaller groups, obviously for better physical distancing. The park updated its mask policy as well, saying that anyone over the age of 2, including those who have been recently COVID-19 vaccinated, they would still need to wear a mask at all times while inside the park. That's a big question. Folks have been asking, okay, I've been vaccinated. Do I still need to wear the mask? Listen, I'm not gonna preach. If my daughters were here, they'd be like, all right, Dad, just move it on. We hear you taking a deep breath. Here's the thing about the vaccine. This is not magic. You can still get COVID. Just because you've been vaccinated doesn't mean you cannot get it and carry it to someone else who hasn't been vaccinated. It just means if you get it, your chances of you going to the hospital or dying are now very, very slim as opposed to before. So people just need to understand that vaccination, even if you got a flu vaccination, how many people do you know, Ruby, they get flu vaccination every year and they get the flu? It doesn't mean you're not going to get the flu. It's supposed to mean that your chances are lower, but still you can get it. But the duration of the, I'm not a scientist, I forgot what that's called, the germination process or whatever it is. All of that stuff is supposed to be lesser impact on your body. So the bottom line is this. Yes, you've been vaccinated, and I think that's absolutely great, but you still have to wear your mask. Now, Disney specifically noted that masks must be worn even when taking photos. Even when taking photos. I see a lot of people doing this because you and I both follow people on Instagram that are, Disney folks.
I'm like, what year is this? Is this year? Oh, it is. Where's your mask? Oh, you took it off. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a problem if you're somewhere. Now, Disney's private property, they're telling you to do this, so do it. But if you're out somewhere and you have your mask on and you're with your family, like people you came with, and you guys want to take a picture of your favorite restaurant, you take your mask off and you put it back on, I don't really have a problem with that. But what Disney is saying, I think, is that so many people look for excuses to take those masks off. They're just saying, now listen, just take the picture with the mask on because it's enough already. You know how people get in front of the castle and they're like on an Instagram photo shoot or something. They had the mask off for 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. It's like, come on, man. What's really happening?
Yeah. I saw a video where Disneyland cast members, and they pretty much said this as well when we got into Buena Vista Street. They were like, please don't take your mask off because Disneyland is not open, right? They just have the downtown shopping and then California Adventure, they have shopping. They're like, if people are posting pictures with your mask off, it tells our legislation that we're not ready to open because we cannot control or influence the people coming into our parks to abide by the rules. And so if you love the parks and you want them to stay open, then you got to respect those rules because your pictures go everywhere and people see it and say, look at these 20 people that went to Disneyland or Disney World and they didn't keep their mask on. So here's grounds to not open. I mean, obviously it's going to be hard, but Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So guys, please take that in consideration. Guests cannot eat or drink while they're in line. Remember, eating and drinking was reason to take the mask off. Of course, Disney said last year, we only want you eating or drinking stationary. When you start walking around, the mask goes back on. You can't walk and eat or walk and drink. And guests who do not follow the policy will be asked to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Neck gaiters, open chin triangle bandanas, which is the worst, and face coverings containing valves, mesh material, or holes of any kind are not allowed. So, guys, this is a new policy. Yes, Disney has PPE available for you to purchase if you come ill prepared, but isn't it better to come prepared? I mean, you want to set yourself up for having a great day. Don't bring any of this stuff because, quite honestly, it's been scientifically proven. I feel safe to say that a lot of these masks are not very secure, or they don't have the integrity that CDC wants you to have, these N95s and things like that. So Disney is going by the book, and they are trying to get the like Ruby said, they're trying to get all of the guests to do the same so that everyone can be safe.
Right.
So in addition to that, Disney's made some adjustments, obviously, to the physical distancing. This includes signs, ground markings, installation of plexiglass, like I was talking about on the monorail, and more. Guests are generally directed to keep a minimum of 6 feet between themselves and other parties. You just have to constantly remeasure. Even if you're going to the grocery store, I find it that you may be standing next to the lemons and you're the only one there, and you look up, and for whatever reason, 2 people who don't live on the earth come and stand right beside you to get the same lemons, as if I'm not going to leave and you can get to the lemons. So even if people beside you are not being the best human beings, you kind of got to self-police. It's like driving. You drive for yourself, but you also drive for everybody else that's on the road because you don't know their skill set. Unfortunately, when it comes to wearing a mask and simple instructions, we don't know everybody's skill set. So you have to drive for everyone.
Yeah.
So real quickly, there's just 2 more. Water parks are going to be open soon. So do I have to wear face coverings at the water park? And the answer is yes. Disney has shared that face coverings will be required in designated areas in Blizzard Beach for guests that are 2 and up. Designated areas also include, but not limited to, the park entrance and exit, the retail shops, of course, food and beverage, and other areas where you may order items for to eat or to purchase. Face coverings will not be allowed, however, while guests are experiencing the water rides themselves. I think that is very reasonable. I wouldn't think someone need to be on a ride with a face mask because it's going to come off. Now, there are these new masks. I don't know if you've seen them, Ruby. They have these transparent panels on them. And so Disney had to address this as well. Disney's rule notes that face coverings with an integrated plastic panel to aid in viewing your mouth must actually be a fabric face covering with a solid plastic panel that contains no openings. The plastic panel must also be attached to the fabric of the mask on all sides using a tight knit stitching. Lastly, and in addition to that, the face mask must meet all of Disney's other requirements, must be at least 2 layers of breathable material, fully cover the nose and mouth and secure the chin, fit snugly but comfortably around the face, be secure with ties or loops, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So they're putting this out not because they don't have anything else to do. Obviously, number one, they've done a review of their processes for the last 12 months, and these are improvements. Why? Because 1, they want to increase quality control. They don't want an outbreak. And 2, when they get ready to really get this cruise thing going, these same requirements are going to be required on the cruise ship. You're not going to be willy-nilly walking around a cruise ship without a mask.
Right.
I don't think.
I think it'll be stricter on the cruise ship because the cruise ship, most of that is indoors. There's like the pool deck and everything. But yeah, in Disney World, you have the benefit of being outside for a lot, except for the queues. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's better now to get folks acclimated to this. Right. And the other thing could be, Ruby, at some point they're going to be able to increase their numbers. You remember last year we started off at 35%, we opened back in 1st of July, and then it rose toward the end of the year, 1st of this year, to 50%. So in Florida, which is moving a little faster than California, who's to say they may come and say, hey guys, you're wide open, do whatever you want to do, 75%, 100, whatever the case may be. Disney is saying, okay, we want to prepare for increased crowds. In my opinion, this isn't written in the article. In my opinion, they're trying to prepare themselves and the guests to get back to the status where they were in terms of capacity. And they need our cooperation in order to do that. This seems reasonable. You want to go, just do what they're asking you to do. It's not really rocket science. Okay, so enough preaching.
I agree. Yeah.
So Ruby, you and I are going this year. Yeah. And we're going in the busiest part of the year. Mm-hmm. But we've both been before. Mm-hmm. But we haven't been during COVID. So we're going in the busiest sector, the busiest quarter, closest to Christmas. And we both feel pretty good about it. And we both already made reservations. So I'll be in November and Ruby will be in December. I'm going to see if I can't circle back in December and do, 2 in 1. Yeah. But the bookings, relatively the same in terms of securing your hotel.
Yeah.
A little different when it comes to the Park Pass reservation system and making sure they congeal. Making sure you don't forget, hey, I have to have a park reservation for the park that I desire to attend. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people, because they haven't gone in this new environment, it's not really all the way home yet. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's where I struggle because my airline tickets, I have flexibility. My reservation for where we're staying, I have flexibility. But I wouldn't have flexibility on my tickets as far as if I bought it today and then I went in or the other way around, I'd go look at the availability for the parks I want to visit, make that reservation and then get my ticket. But if I can't go, I think the tickets have you have a period of time, I think it's a couple months that you can still use them. Right?
Yeah. It's
I don't know, because you have to book, even when you buy your ticket, you say when you're planning to go.
Yeah, I don't think it's a couple months. I think it's actually a couple weeks, within a certain span. And let's say, for example, we're going to be going to 4 parks. Once I hit that first park, all of the ticket timetables start. So I have a certain amount of time. Let's say if something happened, I needed to come back to Atlanta for a few days. Well, I've got maybe 14 days before that last one's going to expire. There used to be a time where you could, as long as you pay for the tickets, you can hold it, not necessarily indefinitely, but there was a larger, a year, 300 and some odd days where you had to use the other tickets or else they would expire. Well, now it's not that way. I'll have to look it up. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll post the answer because that's important. I'll post the answer on our Facebook group and our Facebook page. In addition to that, I'll list these new guidelines for the face mask and some of the PPE and the requirements from the guests, because that's where it begins. You have to anticipate what's required of you. And these are some of the requirements. The bookings for the hotel, I would say, and Ruby, you let me know how you've done it. I actually am booking with a group, and I'm going to put their information on the Facebook group as well. They're called Kingdom DVC. And they've done such a fantastic job working with us, locating the property that we want to go to. I think one of the reasons why so many people are benefiting from working with Kingdom DVC and groups like this is because a lot of people who have DVC points are not able to go. So the points need to be used in some way. I don't pretend to understand it, but I do know we were offered one of our favorite resorts at a very reasonable rate. So we're going to take advantage of it.
Awesome. Yeah. We opted for our timeshare through Wyndham instead because we were nervous about honestly getting tied down to where we couldn't cancel. And I was weary to go do the extra work to make sure that if I did go through a travel agency or if I did try to book directly through a Disney hotel, that I would have wiggle room. I know Disney hotels you can cancel up into usually like a month or a couple of days before. They're pretty flexible, but around that time of year, it gets kind of weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to be staying. It's considered, I guess, Disney property, but it's not a Disney hotel. We're going to stay in Bonnet Creek.
Okay. Yeah. Cool beans.
First time staying there. But so are you going to stay at Animal Kingdom?
Yep. Animal Kingdom. And we have a balcony view to the savannah.
Oh, nice.
So it's like perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm super excited about it. And we even have a down day where I've got dinner planned at Boma. And I honestly, I just fancy sitting in the lobby, looking at the tree, reading a book or taking pictures or whatever. But for half a day, that's where I'm going to be. So I'm going to tell everybody else, whatever you want to go to Disney Springs, whatever, I'm going to be in the lobby, sitting here next to the tree, which is what I was hoping I was going to be doing last year for my birthday. But we'll make it happen.
Nice.
So the other components, Ruby, are the theme parks that we talked about, and that reservation system is key. And we talked about it in a little bit more detail. If you want to go back through the podcast and listen to the prior conversation Ruby and I had, and even we did a podcast talking about a deep dive and uncovering My Disney Experience app. A lot of that information is in there. So don't be intimidated by it. It's just an extra step. Mm-hmm. It's just an extra step. So just know once you get your hotel taken care of, you've got to book the park. So don't think I've got my tickets, I can just go over to Magic Kingdom. No, you have to have a reservation in order to go. Why? There are capacities on the number of people that go in the parks. Now, the good news is this: capacity is going up to 50% from 35%. And also park hopping is back. So just do your homework. Listen to you, Ruby and I. Just make sure you've got every little bit of this sketched out and planned, and you should be good to go. The other two pieces, Ruby, for me were dining, shopping, and extracurriculars. Back to the beginning, when you and I were talking, you're asking and going through this, some things different, and I was talking about expectations. Well, from a dining standpoint, there are no more menus. Everything's virtual. If you were a person that came to the parks, wasn't me, I don't know who this person is, but if you were a cash guy, a cash girl, and you like to, have money, no. My Disney Experience is your best friend. If you plan on going this year, take the time to listen to our podcast about My Disney Experience and learn it. It's very intuitive. You're going to be able to book pretty much everything you need out of there. But this dining, you can determine where you can get your reservation. You can order meals. What do they call it, Ruby? When you're in the car, you can just order the meal and just go pick it up.
Yeah, you're online ordering in the app.
Yeah, online ordering. There you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All of that's on there. So you're going to want it. And it's very accessible and it's going to make your life easier. So My Disney Experience. Mm-hmm. So really, Ruby, those are from my standpoint, the main components that changed. I have adjusted my expectations a little bit. I do think I'm going to be in line a little bit more because although park hopping came back, fast passes have not. So we can anticipate being in lines that we normally may not be in. Okay. Still in Disney World though. So that is going to be the overarching methodology there. The thought is that, hey, I'm still here, so I can spend a little bit more time in line. Yeah. What about you?
And so just circling back on the additional step to plan what park you're in, I do like it because I think that because fast passes are not a thing right now, and like we said, November, December is a super busy time of year, getting 50% capacity. And then when you get to reserve and know, I have to wait in line, but at least I have access to this park and this park, and I know it's only 50%. it does help. I would still there are some apps out there. I don't use them because I'm old and I like to I use like OneNote, but you can plan your day out and say, well, you might not have a fast pass, but here's the lands that I want to go to. And I would be curious as well what the I mentioned before, I like to look at what the typical like busy times are or busy areas for a park. And there's websites out there that have data driven by what happened last year. So we did have a Christmas last year, even though we didn't go. But there's data out there where you can see like Fantasyland tends to be super busy in the morning and not busy in the evening. Okay, so then maybe you flip it. You don't have the fast pass, but maybe you go straight to the Haunted Mansion first and then go to Fantasyland in the evening. So you can still utilize that data that's there. Just keep in mind that the capacities were less in December. Like you mentioned, it was 35%, whereas by the time we're at the end of this year, I'd be surprised if it wasn't at like 65 to 70. It just feels like steadily creeping. But at least you have.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the thing for me.
Well, I tell you what, between you and I and the folks that are listening, I've always fancied the idea of having a reservation to go to the parks. Yeah. I just have, because after doing this for a number of consecutive years and the crowd started getting more and more, I said to my family, I was like, I would pay more. I'll be okay with paying more if I knew that when I came, I could enjoy everything. And the only way to do that is to have a reservation. It's like dining. You know your table's waiting on you. You may have to wait a few minutes to get to it, but you know you got a table and you know you're going to be able to get a seat. Some years you go and you hit a sweet spot and man, you just kind of, the day you come home from work and then every light's green. But then other days it's like an accident in the parking lot. You can't even get out your parking garage. So I've always fancied that. And I think really, to be honest with you, Ruby, that's where all of this is headed. I think in the next 3 years, you're going to see the parks become fully a reservation system where people will have to make a reservation to go. I think the cost will go up. I don't think annual passes are going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah.
They've already taken it away in some areas.
It's weird to see where it's going, for sure.
What do you guys think about the Disneyland annual pass deal?
I mean, ours is gone. They're gonna be, so Disney World's different because if you had it before, you can still get it. Whereas Disneyland is gone. They've been sending surveys out like, would people be interested if this new pass system was put in place? So I think that's good that they're trying to provide an alternate. But I feel for the people that were going to the parks every day and were like, like vloggers and stuff, where even that was I feel for them because the flexibility to just go on a whim and, hey, I want to go down Main Street tonight. I just feel like it. And not being able to do that's sad and hard, especially when you look across to Florida and Florida
every day.
Yeah. I mean, people are still able to do that. So I'm just kind of sitting back and seeing what happens. That's all I can do at this point. And just like, kind of like, oh man, but I'm a very optimistic person. So I believe whatever ends up happening will be moving in a good direction. So
likewise. Well, I've held you for almost an hour and you brought up two topics that I just heard you say that we can talk about on another podcast. One is the whole idea of vlogging and Disney as the prime content. How does that affect folks? And I think we should take that on because you bring up some good points. I read an article not long ago and actually brought it to Instagram about that and Disney's thoughts on that as well. So here's what we'll do, Ms. Ruby. If this is a good cutoff point for you, if you had anything else, you can share it at this time. Otherwise, we'll close it out and do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, no, I thought of a couple different topics as well. I'd love to talk with you about. So let's just plan for our next couple podcasts to continue and elaborate.
Okay. Well, cool beans. Well, guys, we hope you learned something. There's so much going on. There's Seems like there always is. And our job here, as you can see, we're passionate about it. We're just like you. We're learning as this stuff comes out. The difference is we can share it on this platform, and then you can receive it and you can make some decisions based on that for you and your family. So hopefully today's podcast has been insightful for you. We're going to continue to bring this information back to you as it comes to us. And we'll even let you know how things go as we're in the parks. You know, it's going to be later on in the year, but if we get new information, it's going to get to you. Once we're there on our, physically there, we can let you know as well. We appreciate you listening to us. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. And please like, share, and subscribe. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow Ruby at Ruby's Best Life. That's Ruby's with an S _ best, BEST _ life, LIFE. And Ruby is close to Disneyland, and she'll always keep us updated on everything that's going on with Disneyland if you're curious about that. So thank you again, Ruby. It's always so great to see you. And we'll be planning for the next one. And I know, I'm already excited. I can sit and talk to you for another hour. And talk about this. So thank you for your time. And guys, thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next week.
Awesome. Bye.
All righty, Miss Ruby. I'm sorry. I kept looking up at the clock like she said 2:00. And I was like, I keep trying to shut my mouth and it keeps going. So
really good conversation. So I'm happy about that. And then I'll text you the ideas that came up right now that we can elaborate on our next one. And honestly, I think we could do more maybe in 2 months on cruising, because it's just, like I said, it's a mess. But
yeah, and it's unpredictable. So yeah, but thank you so much. Go ahead to your 2:00, and then we'll talk. If you have time next week, even just give me a shout or text me or something, and we'll set up time just to talk.
Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Bye,
Thank
Kelly.
you. See you.